It's great to see you.
Thank you for having me here.
So to what extent are U.S. companies at risk?
These attacks are not just meant to steal data, but rather to destroy those back-end systems, which really is a harbinger of more dark things to come. The Sony case, as they were victimized by those attacks from North Korea, we need to appreciate the fact that that was merely the canary in the coal mine.
That was Trend Micro's chief security officer on Opening Bell earlier. He laid out the possibility of more destructive cyber attacks in the U.S. Alexander Yampolsky is here. He is the CEO of Security Scorecard. It's a startup that allows companies to see how secure their vendors and their partners are. Alex, it's great to see you.
Thank you for having me here.
So to what extent are U.S. companies at risk? You just heard from Trend Micro's chief security officer, and I remember when Sony got hacked, there were a lot of agencies saying, listen, this is like 90% of the vulnerability, or 90% of U.S. companies are that vulnerable.
I think that's a fairly accurate assessment. What I would compare the cybersecurity landscape to right now is that you have a neighborhood, and every single door of every house in the neighborhood is wide open. And when people break into that house, nobody talks to each other, and nobody shares with each other that that house is being attacked. So I would say that it's very easy at this point to attack almost any company, regardless of what type of defenses they have.
Because it sounds like, based on what you're saying, there's absolutely zero cooperation or communication in corporate America saying, hey, we've had this type of attack, here's how we fought it off successfully.
I think there are a couple of problems. If I'm an attacker, I just need to get into one door. But if I'm a company, I have hundreds of doors that I need to protect.
Yeah, you have a harder job.
Right, so I have a much harder job. So it's always easier for an attacker to break in. But also, the beauty of America is so many companies compete with each other. There's so much trade, competition, innovation, but those companies don't necessarily want to share information about the attacks between themselves. And the bad guys actively share attacks on the hacker forums. They constantly talk about themselves and apply the same attacks that work for one company on another company.
So, Alex, I know that a lot of your client companies include retail, financials, healthcare. I mean, it's pretty wide-ranging. What are you seeing as far as the attempted hacks? I mean, is it about destroying data? Is it about stealing data? What's the motivation from what you can tell?
So traditionally, hacker attacks have been financially driven. People wanted to steal the trade secrets. They wanted to steal credit cards. But lately, in the past year, we've seen a big rise in hacktivism attacks, where people want to make a statement. They want to break into the websites. They want to put a political statement out there just to make a statement, or just to delete the data. And the scary thing about that is that attacks to delete the data are much easier to pull off than attacks to exfiltrate the data. It's just much easier to do
it's
damage.
Easier to destroy than it is to steal,
exactly.
Right? Easier to set a house on fire and then to actually get stolen goods out. So what are you doing then for these companies? As you say, each company, let's just say figuratively, has something like 100 doors to protect. So how are you at Security Scorecard helping financial companies, retail companies, healthcare companies? Sure.
So what we do at Security Scorecard is a very different approach to what traditionally security tools do. 80% of the budget in IT security spent today goes towards reactive defenses. So people wait until they're being attacked, and then they look at their firewall logs, intrusion detection system logs, and just kind of try to do it. What we do is we do a proactive approach where we monitor millions of signals, all types of signals, non-intrusively from the outside. What are the hackers talking about? What are the virus infections in companies' computers? How frequently do companies patch their systems? And then what we do...
So essentially you're listening.
Right, we're listening from the outside, but then what we do is we benchmark companies based on how they react. Because what differentiates winners from losers is not whether bad things happen to them, but how quickly do you get back on your feet? How quickly do you react? A big retailer that recently got hacked, when we measured it from the outside, they were taking 2.5 days to clean up malware in their systems.
Yeah, that's a long time, right?
The average in retail was a day. So, if you're taking 2.5 times as long as everybody else, it's not a surprise that you succumb to an attack.
Let me ask you this, Alex. So one of my colleagues in D.C., Peter Barnes, just telling us that there has been an outage, a power outage. We have no idea if it is cyber related. But what is your fear about hackers being able to access utilities, whether it's an electrical grid, causing a power outage, whether it's water? I mean, there's all kinds of possibilities.
Yeah, so I mean, this definitely concerns me, and we know, as a matter of fact, that hackers are very much even training themselves. If you look at some of the hacker chatter on the hacker forums, the hackers conduct just training exercises. Let's go break into this utility company. Let's go break into this other agency. And when we observe at Security Scorecard the state of the utilities, the energy, the government, even today, as we speak right now, the multiple websites, the multiple computers belonging to various departments which are compromised and have serious vulnerabilities that would be very easy to exploit. So I'm concerned. It's like a cheddar cheese with a lot of holes, but it's not clear kind of how to stop all of it.
Alex, chances are we're going to be talking again very soon. Thank you very much. In the meantime, for the time, Alexander Yampolsky joining me there. He is the CEO of Security Scorecard.
Seems like every week there's a report of a new major hack, doesn't it? Just within the past couple months, we've seen North Korea, Spam House, and the New York Times all fall victim to hacks. The targets are varied, as are the motives, but many of them share one thing in common: a distributed denial of service, or DDoS, method by the perpetrators. Amazon, Sony, various stock exchanges, Gene Simmons, just to name a few, have been victims of DDoS attacks on their websites. It's a favorite method of anonymous folks who recently targeted the Twitter and Flickr accounts of North Korea, for example. But how exactly do these work, and why have they become so common? Well, the perpetrator will employ a botnet, which are like armies of individual bots who can be summoned to overwhelm a particular site with traffic. These individual bots are basically computers that have been infected with attack software. Botnets can be made up of hundreds of thousands of bots, and the largest of these is believed to be one called Cutwhale, which is also rumored to be infecting Android phones right now, masquerading as an Adobe software update. So if you see that, don't install it. And yes, if you're a terrible person, you can hire botnets to do your bidding. It's not legal. If you were, you'd command the bots to simply hit a site with traffic or nonsense requests until the servers overload and it shuts down, usually within just a few minutes. Why have they become so effective? Well, they're cheap, virtually untraceable, and they improve as speeds of the infected computers improve. So, in other words, they get better as internet speeds overall get better. And often the end result is basically a form of blackmail or protest. We mess with your website, give us what we want. We saw this in the Spam House attacks of a few weeks back, which was the strongest DDoS attack by a large margin, in excess of 380 gigabits per second. Other than not pissing people off, I guess, your prevention strategy is as follows. Get a professional company to help mitigate the attacks. They'll install a NetFlow protocol which monitors traffic to your site, and if they see something out of the ordinary, they can route it elsewhere. If you're an individual rather than a business, well, a fearless TFN viewer, Hans, who also happens to be a security expert specializing in DDoS, recommended to me by email that you just weather it out. Chances are you don't have the infrastructure in place to deal with it. As for those massive botnets wreaking havoc on government, corporate, financial, and all kinds of institutions everywhere, they can be dismantled with the right people. Famously, in 2012, Microsoft collaborated with law enforcement in raiding a considerable number of servers in Illinois and Pennsylvania, which served as command and control for 13 million infected computers. One of those defeated botnets, called Rustock, was responsible for an astonishing 1/3 of the world's spam at the time, according to the security firm Symantec. Still, the problem of DDoS attacks remains an elusive one that affects many. Have you ever been the victim of a hacking of any kind? Let us know your story in the comments, and if it's really crazy, Scott and I will share it with everyone on next weekend's Feedback. For TFN, this is Annie.
You've seen the headlines, and you know the impact they can have on your company. Downtime, lost revenue, and brand tarnishment, just to name a few. It doesn't matter if you're a large enterprise, small business, e-commerce company, or government institution. If your data center or website is internet-facing, you're vulnerable to DDoS attacks. So it's vital that you detect and stop them before they impact your business. For over 10 years, Arbor Networks has been analyzing internet threats and producing both in-cloud and customer premises